She never spoke a single word during the flight. Passengers ignored her. Flight attendants forgot her. But when both engines died at 30,000 feet and the plane became a falling glider, the quiet girl everyone dismissed was the only person who could land it. She was a ghost until she became their only hope. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Maya Chen settled into seat 14C with the practiced ease of someone who had flown thousands of hours. She pulled her worn paperback from her bag, adjusted the air vent above her head, and disappeared into herself the way she always did on commercial flights. The flight attendant paused at her row. "Can I get you something to drink before takeoff?" Maya shook her head once. A small, polite movement. Nothing more. "Okay then." The attendant moved on without a second glance. Transair Flight 447 from Denver to Seattle was full that Tuesday afternoon. Maya had chosen the window seat deliberately. People rarely tried to talk to window seat passengers, especially quiet ones who never made eye contact. The businessman in 14B glanced at her as he squeezed past to the middle seat. "Long flight, huh?" Maya nodded without looking up from her book. He waited a moment for more. When nothing came, he shrugged and pulled out his laptop. Within minutes, he had forgotten she existed. The elderly woman in 14A tried once. "Is that a good book, dear?" Another small nod. The woman smiled awkwardly and turned to stare out the window instead. This was how Maya preferred it. Invisible. Forgotten. Just another face in a crowd of 200 passengers heading north on an ordinary Tuesday. The flight attendants moved through their safety demonstration. Maya didn't watch. She had memorized every emergency procedure on a Boeing 737 years ago. She knew where every exit was, how many rows to each one, which ones would be unusable in certain crash scenarios. She knew the aircraft could glide approximately 2 miles for every 1,000 feet of altitude. She knew the best glide speed was 210 knots for this model. She knew things that might matter someday. But not today. Today was just another commercial flight. Another few hours of blessed silence before she had to return to her quiet life on the ground. The engines roared. The plane lifted off smoothly. Denver fell away beneath them as they climbed into clear blue sky. Maya turned a page in her book without reading it. Her eyes tracked the words, but her mind was elsewhere. It was always elsewhere on flights like this. Calculating. Monitoring. Listening to the engine pitch, feeling the aircraft's movements through the seat beneath her. Old habits died hard. The flight attendant came by again after they reached cruising altitude. "Would you like anything? Water? Coffee?" Maya shook her head. The attendant barely paused. She had already marked Maya in her mind as the quiet one. The passenger who wanted nothing. The one you could skip on the next beverage run because she never asked for anything anyway. 30 minutes into the flight, the businessman in 14B tried one more time. "Heading to Seattle for business or pleasure?" Maya gave him a brief glance. She held up her book slightly, a gentle signal. Then she looked back down. He got the message. "Right. Okay. Enjoy your book." He put his headphones in and never spoke to her again. The woman in 14A had given up long before that. And so Maya Chen became invisible. Just another quiet passenger that nobody noticed. Nobody remembered. Nobody cared about. That was fine with her. She had spent the last 8 years learning to be invisible. The flight continued smoothly for another hour. They were somewhere over Idaho, cruising at 30,000 feet. The cabin had settled into that familiar airplane quiet. Some passengers slept. Others watched movies on their phones. The businessman in 14B was deep into a spreadsheet. Maya had closed her book 20 minutes ago. Something felt wrong. It was nothing obvious. The engines sounded normal. The flight was smooth. But there was something in the air, a quality she couldn't quite name. Attention. Like the moment before lightning strikes. She sat perfectly still, every sense alert. Then she heard it. A sound that most passengers wouldn't notice. A subtle change in the engine pitch. A slight fluctuation that lasted less than 2 seconds. Her hands tightened on the armrests. The captain's voice came over the intercom, calm and professional. "Flight attendants, please take your seats." That was all. No explanation. But Maya knew what it meant. Something was wrong up front. She watched the lead flight attendant's face as the woman moved quickly toward her jump seat. There was concern there. Hidden beneath professional calm, but there. Maya's heart rate increased. Not from fear. From readiness. Another sound. This one loud enough that several passengers looked up from their phones. A sharp electrical pop from somewhere above them. The lights flickered. Then came the announcement that changed everything. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Morrison. We're experiencing some technical difficulties with our electrical systems. We're going to need to make an early landing in Boise. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Flight attendants, prepare for possible emergency landing." The cabin erupted in nervous chatter. The woman in 14A gripped her armrest. The businessman in 14B closed his laptop slowly. Maya said nothing. But she was no longer invisible to herself. Every nerve was alive. Every sense focused. She knew what technical difficulties with electrical systems could mean. She knew what the pilots were probably seeing in the cockpit right now. Warning lights. System failures. The kind of cascading problems that could turn bad very quickly. The plane banked left, beginning its descent toward Boise. That was when the lightning hit. The bolt struck the aircraft's nose cone with a flash so bright that several passengers screamed. The entire plane shook. Every light went out simultaneously. Then the engine stopped. Not sputtered. Not coughed. Just stopped. The familiar steady roar that had been the background noise of the flight simply vanished, replaced by an eerie, terrifying silence. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in dim red. In that red light, Maya saw panic beginning to spread through the cabin. Passengers were shouting questions. A child started crying. The businessman beside her was frozen, his face pale. Maya's mind was perfectly clear. Total electrical failure. Lightning strike had killed every system. Both engines out. No power. No hydraulics. No flight instruments. No controls. They were a glider now. A 200-passenger glider falling from 30,000 feet with pilots who had probably never trained for this specific scenario. She unbuckled her seatbelt. "Miss, please remain seated." A flight attendant stumbled past in the dim light, trying to reach the front of the cabin. Maya ignored her. She moved into the aisle, heading forward. Her legs were steady despite the aircraft's slight downward tilt. She had walked through emergency scenarios 100 times before. This was just another one. A hand grabbed her arm. Another flight attendant. "Ma'am, you need to sit down." Maya spoke for the first time since boarding. Her voice was calm, quiet, but absolutely certain. "I need to get to the cockpit. I'm a pilot. I don't care what you are, you need to. I'm a test pilot. I specialize in unpowered flight. That's what this aircraft is now. A glider. And you have maybe 12 minutes before it hits the ground." Maya pulled her arm free gently but firmly. "Let me through." The flight attendant stared at her, shocked. This quiet woman who hadn't said a word for 2 hours was suddenly speaking with absolute authority. "The pilots are trained for engine failures with electrical power. Not total system loss. Not dead stick from 30,000 feet. Maya was already moving forward. Every second matters. She reached the cockpit door. It was locked, but in the chaos of the emergency, a flight attendant was just exiting with a crash axe. Maya caught the door before it closed. Inside the cockpit was controlled panic. Captain Morrison was wrestling with the control column, trying to get any response. His co-pilot was frantically flipping switches, trying to restart systems that were completely dead. "We've got nothing," the co-pilot shouted. "No engines, no electrics, no hydraulics. The controls are locked. Keep trying the APU." Morrison ordered. "We need power for the hydraulics or we can't steer this thing." Maya stepped inside. "The APU won't help. You're completely dead. But you can still fly this aircraft." Both pilots turned to stare at her. Morrison's face was red with stress and confusion. "Who the hell are you? Get out of my cockpit." "My name is Maya Chen. I was a test pilot for 12 years at Edwards Air Force Base. I specialized in emergency procedures and unpowered flight testing. I have over 300 dead stick landings, including 4 from above 20,000 feet. She moved closer, her voice steady. "I can help you fly this plane. But we need to act now." The co-pilot laughed, a sound edged with hysteria. "Fly it? We can't even steer. The hydraulics are dead." "You don't need hydraulics. You have manual reversion." Maya pointed to the control column. "Feel that? That's direct cable connection to the control surfaces. No power assist, but it works. You're fighting it because you're used to hydraulic help. Stop fighting. Feel the pressure. Work with it." Morrison stared at her for one long second. Then he looked down at his useless instruments, at his dead throttle controls, at the nose of his aircraft pointing toward the ground with no engines and no power. He made a decision. "Tell me what to do." Maya moved to stand behind the captain's seat, her eyes scanning the dark instruments, the view through the windscreen, the angle of descent. "First, altitude and airspeed. What do you have?" "Everything's dead," the co-pilot said helplessly. "No instruments. Look outside. Estimate your altitude by the ground features. Airspeed by the sound of the wind. What do you hear?" Morrison listened. "We're descending fast. Too fast. Pull back. Gently. Don't fight the controls, just steady pressure. Feel the resistance." Morrison pulled. The control column fought him, but it moved. The nose of the aircraft lifted slightly. "Good. Now hold it. You're looking for a specific pitch attitude. See the horizon? You want the nose about 5 degrees below it. That's your glide attitude." "How can you tell it's 5 degrees without instruments?" the co-pilot asked. "Experience. I've glided aircraft without instruments before. You learn to feel it." Maya pointed through the windscreen. "Captain, what's our position?" "We were heading for Boise before everything went dead. I don't know, maybe 80 miles out." Maya did the math instantly in her head. 30,000 feet. They could glide about 60 miles in perfect conditions. Maybe 70 if they were precise. 80 was too far. Boise's too far. We need another option. What's between here and there? The co-pilot pulled out his phone with shaking hands. "I've got a map app. There's, small regional airport, Mountain Home. About 40 miles ahead. Runway length? 10,000 feet. But we'd need ATC clearance, and ATC doesn't matter if we're dead in the sky." Maya leaned forward. 40 miles. That's tight but possible. "Captain, I need you to maintain this exact pitch. Don't try to stretch the glide by pulling up more. That will slow you down and you'll lose lift. Stay steady. What's our glide ratio? Morrison asked. He was starting to trust this strange quiet woman who suddenly knew everything about his emergency. About 15 to 1 in these conditions. For every 1,000 feet you drop, you move forward 15,000 feet. 2.8 miles per 1,000 feet. We're at 30,000, so theoretically we can glide 84 miles. Then we can make it. In perfect conditions. But you're not perfect. You're fighting dead controls with no hydraulic assist. You'll make mistakes. You'll lose efficiency. And we have wind. Plus we need altitude for our landing pattern. Maya pointed ahead. Assume you can make 70 miles. That's your range. 40 miles to mountain home gives us margin. The co-pilot was staring at her. Who are you really? Someone who trained for scenarios that nobody thinks will happen. Until they do. Maya looked at the altimeter, dark and useless. We're passing through 25,000 now, based on our rate of descent. Give me a heading to mountain home. The co-pilot checked his phone. About 15 degrees right of our current course. Captain, you need to turn. No engines means no rudder authority. You'll use ailerons and elevator only. Bank right, very gently. Feel the controls. Morrison pushed the column right. The aircraft banked slowly, fighting him every inch. Steady, Maya said. Don't overcorrect. Small movements. This is like flying a glider. Smooth is fast. The plane turned. Slowly, awkwardly, but it turned. Behind them in the cabin, passengers were silent now. The terror had settled into grim fear. Parents held children. Strangers held hands. Everyone could feel the descent. Everyone knew something was terribly wrong. The flight attendants were doing their best to keep order, but what could they say? The engines were silent. The plane was falling. In seat 14C, the businessman looked at the empty seat beside him. The quiet woman who never spoke. Where had she gone? We're at 20,000 feet, Maya estimated, watching the ground features grow larger. About 15 minutes to impact at our current glide speed. Impact, the co-pilot whispered. Don't you mean landing? That depends on how well we execute. Captain, you're doing well, but I need you to tighten your pitch control. You're wandering between 4 and 6 degrees. Hold it at 5. Morrison nodded, his arms shaking with the effort of controlling the heavy aircraft manually. This is incredibly hard. That's because you're used to the hydraulics doing 90% of the work. Now it's all you. But you're getting the feel of it. You're doing better than most pilots would. It was true. Morrison was adapting quickly. His initial panic had transformed into intense focus. He was learning to read the aircraft's behavior through his hands, through the pressure on the controls, through the sound of the wind over the wings. Co-pilot, what's your name? Maya asked. Jensen. First Officer Tyler Jensen. Jensen, I need you to prepare the cabin. Tell the flight attendants to prep for emergency landing. Crash position at 500 feet. And I need you to calculate our fuel state. We were at 40% before the failure. But it doesn't matter. Engines are dead. Fuel matters because it's weight. More weight means steeper glide, but also more momentum for landing. We might actually want to dump fuel if we could, but the dump systems are electric. How much weight are we carrying? Jensen did the math on his phone. About 200 passengers, cargo, crew, fuel, roughly 160,000 pounds. Heavy. That's going to make the flare difficult. Maya watched the ground creeping closer. 15,000 feet now. Captain, you need to start thinking about your landing pattern. You get one shot at this. No go around. If you miss the runway, we crash. Morrison's jaw tightened. Understood. The good news is 10,000 feet of runway is plenty. The bad news is you're landing a very heavy aircraft with no engine power, no hydraulics, no flaps, no speed brakes, and no brakes. No brakes. Jensen turned pale. Electric and hydraulic. You'll have emergency brakes, but they're manual and weak. You're going to land hot and fast. Probably around 180 knots touchdown speed. That's insane. That's unpowered flight. But the runway can handle it if you hit your marks. Maya pointed ahead. There. Is that mountain home? Jensen checked his phone. Yes. That's it. The small airport was visible now, a pair of runways forming an X on the flat Idaho landscape. It looked impossibly small from this altitude. Like trying to land on a postage stamp. We're at 12,000 feet, Maya said. Call them on emergency frequency. Let them know we're coming in dead stick. Jensen grabbed the radio, then stopped. Radio's dead too. Right. Then they'll figure it out when they see us. Captain, you need to set up for a long final approach. See that highway running parallel to the runway? Use that as your guide. Fly parallel to it, then turn base, then final. High and steep. Dive for the runway if you have to. Better too much altitude than too little. Morrison nodded, his full concentration on the flying. Maya watched his hands on the controls. Watched the angle of the wings. Watched the ground rising up to meet them. This was it. This was what she had trained for during all those years that seemed so distant now. All those practiced dead-stick landings. All those emergency scenarios. All that preparation for the thing that was never supposed to happen. And now it was happening. 10,000 feet, she said quietly. Start your pattern, Captain. And stay calm. You can do this. The aircraft descended through 10,000 feet. The ground was close now. Too close. Every passenger who looked out the window could see roads, buildings, cars. They were used to seeing these things from 30,000 feet where everything looked like a toy model. Now it looked real. Terrifyingly real. In the cockpit, Maya stood between the two pilots, her hand resting lightly on the back of Morrison's seat. Turn left now, she said. You're entering downwind leg. Stay parallel to the runway. Morrison banked the aircraft left. It responded sluggishly, like trying to steer a ship through mud. Good. Now hold this altitude, you're sinking a bit fast. Pull up slightly. I pull up, I lose speed, Morrison said through gritted teeth. You're at about 210 knots. That's perfect for this glide. Trust your pitch attitude. Don't chase the altitude. Fly the attitude. It was the oldest rule of flying, especially unpowered flight. Pick your pitch, hold it steady, and let the aircraft do what it wants to do. Fighting it only made things worse. Jensen was watching out the window. We're passing the runway now. On our left. Good, Maya said. Now when you reach the end of the runway, start your base turn. 90 degrees left. And this is critical, do not overshoot. If you go too far past the runway, you won't have altitude to turn back. Better to turn early than late. Morrison nodded. He was beyond words now. All his focus was on the feel of the controls, the sight of the runway, the impossible task of landing a dead aircraft. The airport slid past their left side. They could see emergency vehicles starting to gather on the ground. Tiny red trucks racing toward the runway. Now. Maya said. Turn base. Morrison banked left again. The aircraft responded. The runway appeared ahead of them now, still distant but visible. We're at 5,000 feet, Jensen reported, watching his phone altimeter app. Too high, Morrison said. We're going to overshoot. No, Maya said calmly. You're exactly where you need to be. High and fast is good. You can always lose altitude. You can't gain it. When you turn final, you're going to make it look like you're diving at the runway. That's correct. That's what we want. This is insane. This is dead stick landing technique. Trust it. Turn final now. Line up with the runway. Morrison turned the aircraft one more time. 90 degrees right. The runway appeared in front of them, a long strip of concrete that looked far too narrow and far too short. 4,000 feet, Jensen said. His voice was tight with fear. Maya could see they were indeed high. Very high. In a normal approach, they would be at around 1,500 feet at this distance. They were at 4,000 and dropping fast. Start your dive, she said. Drop the nose. Let it fall. If I drop the nose, we'll go too fast. You need the speed. You have no flaps, remember? Your stall speed is higher. And you need momentum for the flare. Drop the nose. Now. Morrison pushed forward on the controls. The nose dropped. The aircraft pitched down. The runway rushed up at them. In the cabin, passengers screamed. The angle was steep. It felt like a dive bomber. Like they were falling out of the sky. They were falling out of the sky. 3,000 feet. Steady, Maya said. Hold this angle. You're doing perfect. I'm doing 70 degrees nose down. 15 degrees. It feels steeper because you're scared. Trust your sight picture. See the runway angle? That's 15 degrees. Hold it. The airport was growing rapidly. They could see people on the ground now. See the emergency vehicles. See the runway markings. 2,000 feet. Get ready for the flare, Maya said. This is the hard part. You're going to pull back on the controls with everything you have. The aircraft won't want to respond. Pull anyway. Ease the nose up. Bleed off that speed. Make it float. When? Morrison's arms were trembling. I'll tell you. Not yet. Hold the dive. 500 feet more. The runway filled the windscreen. They were screaming toward it at over 200 knots. Way too fast. Way too steep. 1,500 feet. We're going to hit. Not yet, Maya said. Her voice was absolutely calm. Hold it. 1,000 feet. The runway was all they could see. Now. Maya commanded. Pull. Pull hard. Morrison hauled back on the controls with all his strength. His arms burned. The control column fought him, resisting with the force of 200 passengers and 90 tons of aircraft. The nose started to rise. Slowly. So slowly. Keep pulling. Maya said. Don't let up. The ground rushed up. 500 feet. 300. 100. The nose was rising. The dive angle was flattening. But they were still dropping fast. Flight attendants, brace for impact. Jensen yelled into the dead intercom, forgetting it didn't work. 50 feet. 20 feet. The nose was almost level now. Almost. 10 feet. Hold it. Maya said. Hold it. 5 feet. The main landing gear touched concrete with a jarring thud. The aircraft bounced. Morrison pushed the nose down. The nose gear slammed down. They were on the runway. But they were going way too fast. The runway screamed beneath them. 170 knots. No engines to reverse thrust. No speed brakes to deploy. Just friction and momentum and 10,000 feet of concrete. Brakes. Jensen yelled. Manual brakes. Morrison stomped on the brake pedals. The aircraft shuddered. The emergency braking system engaged, but without hydraulic pressure, it was like trying to stop a freight train with bicycle brakes. They were slowing. But not fast enough. We're going to run out of runway. Jensen could see the end approaching. Beyond it, flat desert and scrub brush. Maya leaned forward. Don't just stomp the brakes. Pump them. On off on off. Keep the wheels from locking. Morrison followed her instruction. Pump the brakes. Release. Pump again. The aircraft slowed. 150 knots. 130. 110. The end of the runway was coming up fast. 100 knots. 90. 80. They passed the three-quarter mark of the runway. Only 2,500 feet left. 70 knots. 60. The emergency vehicles were chasing them, red lights flashing. 50 knots. 40. 1,000 feet of runway left. 500. 200. 30 knots. 20. 100 feet of runway left. 10 knots. The aircraft rolled to a stop with 50 feet of concrete to spare. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Morrison let out a breath that seemed to come from his soul. We're down. Oh God, we're down. Jensen was laughing and crying at the same time. We made it. We actually made it. Maya stepped back. You made it, Captain. You flew that landing. I just told you how. Morrison turned in his seat to look at her. Really look at her. This quiet woman who appeared from nowhere and saved 200 lives. Who are you? Just a passenger, Maya said quietly. The emergency exit doors were opening. The slides were deploying. Flight attendants were shouting evacuation orders. Passengers were sliding down to safety, many of them crying, some screaming with relief. Jensen opened the cockpit door. You need to evacuate too. Maya nodded. But Morrison caught her arm as she turned to leave. Wait. Your name. You said Maya Chen. Are you the test pilot from Edwards? The one who did all those unpowered flight tests after the accident? Maya met his eyes. That was a long time ago. You disappeared. After the inquiry. People said you quit. That you never wanted to fly again. I didn't quit. I just stopped talking about it. Maya gently pulled her arm free. I need to go. Why? Morrison asked. Why were you on my flight? Just chance. Is anything just chance, Captain? Maya moved toward the door. You did well today. You saved your passengers. You should be proud. She left the cockpit. The evacuation was orderly chaos. Passengers stumbling down emergency slides, flight attendants counting heads, emergency crews checking for injuries. News helicopters were already arriving overhead, their cameras recording everything. Maya walked away from the aircraft slowly. She didn't run. She didn't rush. She just walked, heading away from the crowds and the cameras and the noise. Ma'am. Ma'am, you need to go to the processing area. A firefighter tried to direct her back. Maya kept walking. She had answered questions after the accident 8 years ago. Months of questions. FAA inquiries. NTSB hearings. Congressional testimony. She had explained over and over what went wrong, how she had survived, why others hadn't. She was done answering questions. Behind her, she could hear Captain Morrison shouting. Find that woman. Maya Chen. Someone find her. But Maya had already reached the airport perimeter fence. She slipped through a gate left open by emergency vehicles and disappeared into the parking lot beyond. A taxi was dropping off a passenger at the terminal. Maya caught it before the driver could leave. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Bus station. Greyhound." He looked at her curiously. She was disheveled from the flight. But she looked calm. Unshaken. "You just come off that plane." He pointed at the emergency scene. Maya shook her head. "Just visiting someone." The taxi drove away. Behind them, investigators were already swarming the dead aircraft. They would spend months figuring out exactly what happened. The lightning strike. The cascading system failures. The total electrical loss. They would interview the pilots. They would hear about the mysterious passenger who saved the flight. They would search for her. But Maya Chen was good at disappearing. The news story ran for weeks. Miracle landing at Mountain Home. Mystery woman saves flight 447. Hero pilot vanishes after emergency landing. Captain Morrison gave interviews. He told the story again and again. The quiet passenger. The test pilot. The woman who knew everything about unpowered flight and appeared exactly when she was needed. The FAA searched for her. They wanted to interview her. Commend her. Understand what she had done. They found records. Maya Chen, former test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base. Specialized in emergency procedures. Left the service after a training accident that killed 2 other pilots. She had been flying the aircraft that day. She survived. They didn't. The inquiry cleared her of wrongdoing. Mechanical failure. Not pilot error. But she had still quit. Still disappeared. Until she showed up on flight 447. The searches eventually stopped. The story faded from the news. Life moved on. Maya was on a small commuter flight from Spokane to Portland. The aircraft was tiny. Just 20 seats. She sat by the window in the back row. The flight attendant came by. "Anything to drink?" Maya shook her head. A small movement. "Nothing more." "Okay then." The attendant moved on. The businessman across the aisle tried to make conversation. "First time in Portland?" Maya didn't respond. She had her book open. She didn't look up. He got the message. The plane lifted off. Maya felt the familiar sensations. The acceleration. The climb. The moment the wheels left the ground. She closed her eyes. In her mind, she was always flying. Always calculating glide ratios. Always monitoring engine sounds. Always preparing for the emergency that might never come. Or might come at 30,000 feet on a Tuesday afternoon. The quiet passenger in the back row. The woman everyone ignored. The one who was ready when ready mattered. Maya opened her book and began to read. The words on the page blurred. Outside the window, clouds drifted past. And somewhere in her mind, she was still flying. Still gliding. Still bringing that dead aircraft down from the sky. Every flight. Every time. Forever ready.